Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Pickle Jar. We're going to go on a bit of a ramble today. I mean, the topic should be all-inclusive. One other note, I've decided I don't need to use my headphones. I'm not sure why I started using them in the middle of everything, but I thought maybe it would help with the appearance and the way things sounded, but I don't think it does. And so I'm not doing my headphones today. We'll see how the quality works out. I don't know that it will make any difference, to be quite honest. But today I really want to talk about some things, some epiphanies that I've had this week. And so this episode is around all of the things that I just really began to understand about emotional intelligence and what it means to nurture and grow your emotional intelligence. And many of you know I am a certified GenOS practitioner. I do a lot with doing 360s and 180s to help people understand how they are showing up to the people that they work with, live with, just to get they can ask for their raters to give them anonymous feedback so they understand how their emotional intelligence actually is being portrayed to others, not just what they think about themselves in their own head. Now, you can use GenOS and have no raters and just self-rate yourself, but you don't always get all the feedback that you might need for GenOS. And then I also am a certified Gallup Strengths coach, if you know anything about Gallup Strengths. It used to be called Clifton Strengths Finder. It may still be. They keep changing the names. But I use it on a pretty regular basis in my day job. So for those of you that don't know, I do have a day job. I am a category advisor for Walmart, for Walmart on behalf of Procter & Gamble. And so I do have a 40-hour-a-week job. And within that job, on top of those 40 hours a week that I spend as a category advisor, I'm also an internal coach. I am ICF credentialed executive coach, and I do spend time talking to everyone from the hourly employees who are the core of the business, all the way up to I have some C-suite clients that I do talk to. That's internally to my day job at Procter & Gamble. Externally, you probably definitely know that I have a company called Rising Tide Coaching. I do believe that when one of us gets better, we all get better, and a rising tide floats all boats. So I'm misappropriating the quote, but I'm using it to sort of give the analogy of if we can all improve just a little bit, we all, as a collective, improve. And as a part of that, I've come to learn that emotional intelligence is the core of what makes a culture good. And that doesn't matter if you have family culture, the culture within your immediate family, broad family, whether it's the culture on a sports team that you're part of. Maybe you play a sport. I have a friend who plays adult hockey, ice hockey, and they have one kind of culture, and then you may have kids that are on a little league team or a football team, but there's a culture among the parents and among the team. Maybe you're on not a real sports team, but on a really big sports team like NFL, or my audience is pretty broad. So it can also be at work. Maybe it's the corporate culture, but EQ is the driver of what that culture is. And whoever has the strongest, most powerful personality and is leading that is going to be the one that's going to be what culture is dictated for the group. And I say that because I see a lot of changes within many organizations happen, especially when leadership changes, or if you're on a team and the coach changes, or you have someone who's on that team who is particularly toxic. It can really hurt that culture. And emotional intelligence is the one thing about a human that can be grown and evolved and changed. IQ, you're born with your you're born with your intellectual intelligence. So IQ is what you have when you're born. And there's nothing you can do to improve that. And the only way you can degrade that is with some sort of change physically to your brain. Now, let's be clear. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. So, you can definitely check me and comment below if you know that I'm wrong. But without a physical brain change, your IQ is what it was when you're born. And the same is true for your personality. Your personality is what you were born with, and we all have very specific brain wiring. There are the camps of neurodivergent, which is what this conversation is primarily about. And then there are the neurotypical folks whose brains are wired the same, generally speaking, within probably 80 to 85% of the population has very similar brain wiring. And then there are those of us that are neurodivergent, and we have different superhighways in our brains where we can think about math and logic and creativity in a different way than what our neurotypical counterparts. But then we also don't have or pick up on a lot of the social cues. So that is in the camp of ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. A lot of the others that come, Tourette's falls in that same camp. And then there might also be some mental health conditions that are going on. You're born with those mental health conditions, whether it's schizophrenia or bipolar, depression, whether it's chemical imbalances, whether it's brain wiring. There are a lot of different factors that are involved in your personality and how you come across. And that is what you get when you're born. EQ, however, is the one piece of the triad that makes up who you are that can be changed. And you can, once you understand where you are on the range of emotional intelligence behaviors, the better you can engage and understand and have compassion and are working with other folks. And you, especially if you're in a leadership position or you have a very strong personality and you're shaping the culture of those around you, it would help everybody if you had also the greatest emotional intelligence of the group and were savvy and aware and knew how you were affecting other people. But so how do you do that? How do you fix or correct or grow or improve or evolve your emotional intelligence? Now, there are a number of ways, but first of all, understanding how our brains are wired and why you may or may not be showing up the way you had hoped or think. Maybe you know that you show up in a negative way. Maybe you know you show up in a positive way. And that is, to begin with, the biomechanics of it, the neuroscience behind it, is that we're feeling beings that think. And I grew up in a household where feelings were not accepted, approved, going on a ramble, talking about things, talking about your feelings, only facts. My dad was undiagnosed neurodivergent, and he was quite a piece of work, and he was a very difficult parent to have. And then my mother, I believe, was a borderline sociopath, and it was very difficult. I knew she was controlling how he behaved and who he was. But that's a whole other aside, and probably something I should take it with my therapist. But anyway, when you are a feeling creature, you have 5 senses that are feeling those biomechanical neurosynapses that are being built in your brain. And when you're taking things in through your 5 senses, so think about you've seen something that you like or upsets you. Maybe you heard something that you like or upsets you. You smell something that triggers another emotion or a feeling. You taste something that triggers an emotion or gives you a visceral response, positive or negative. Or you have something physically done to you, for you, positive or negative. It can be either way. Over time, over the years of your life, you learn to create and build the neurosynapses for a reaction. And how you are reacting to those things and how you learn to react is sometimes influenced by your brain wiring. And myself as a neurodivergent, there are a lot of times that things were said or done to me, and I didn't know how I was supposed to respond to that. I just knew it didn't seem right, or it hurt my feelings, but I didn't know what to do about that, and I didn't know how to stand up for myself. And so I was building neurosynapses along the way of behavior when those things repeated themselves. In some cases it was retracting from or just accepting my situation. I've evolved over time. And so my neurosynapses have been built to do when certain things come up in red flags or green flags, whether it's positive or negative. I built neurosynapses to handle my behavior. And when you do that enough times, think about how many times you have a gut reaction. You feel it in your gut. You just have an instinct about something. A lot of that is built because you had feelings, you had something come in through your senses, and all of those things come into your limbic brain first. Your spine, your core, your nerves, all of that feeds into your brain and is feeding all of the senses from your fingers and your eyes and your ears and your mouth. All of those sensations are coming in through the spinal cord, into the nervous system, and into your limbic brain. And that's how it works. The amygdala is a part of that, is a smaller piece of that limbic, but the whole limbic brain system is what is receiving those inputs. And that's where fight, flight, or freeze come in. You learn how to do those things. Sometimes you're trained as a child. Maybe your parents taught you to react in a very specific way, or you learned out of self-preservation how to react in a very specific way. And so when that gets triggered, those neurosynapses fire, and you have that gut reaction. And then your thinking brain kicks in and tells you, we need to do the following things. But you have a physical, sensorial response first. And then you have a chance to think about it. Well, how do you get ahead of some of that? What if you're trying to retrain yourself? How many times have you been caught in a situation with a family member or a friend or a boss or a coworker or a competitor on the field or a competitor in life, a parent, like whatever that looks like? How many times have you been caught and you had a big reaction and then you're like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen that way. I didn't mean for it to come across that way. And it starts getting you in trouble. It can impact relationships. It can definitely impact, your career. And it can impact how your coworkers view you, especially if you're a leader. It can also definitely impact how your employees respond to you. It will impact the people that you associate with. Your wife, your husband, your partner, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your kids are all impacted by how you react in a specific situation it's probably happened multiple times. You get triggered and you don't want to be, I have a friend who their first response, if they are about to be embarrassed or think that they have been embarrassed, is to immediately go to a frustrated, aggravated, mad place and lash out at whoever is making him feel impatient or frustrated or embarrassed. And that has been taught over the years. I believe he said that his mother was like that, and so he has just always protective, never wanting to have his mother be embarrassed, and so that was the worst thing that could ever happen. And so he built neurosynapses to trigger that frustration, that anger, that aggravation response before he's had a chance to think about what would that do. So if it's at a waiter or a waitress, it's that gut reaction. You're embarrassing me. You're making me go through all these hoops. Why am I having to? I'm just feeling very frustrated. Why can't you get your act together? Or something triggers an embarrassing memory or something that makes him feel very uncomfortable. And his first reaction is anger or frustration. And then damage control has to happen. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to react like that. I'm trying to learn to be more patient. I know you didn't mean what you said, or I didn't mean to be rude. But what could be improved in that situation? And that would be if there was a pause. And training the pause and knowing that I'm having a big reaction, and then pressing pause and asking, what is the next best step I could take? Instead of just having my gut reaction, because I'm feeling very frustrated. I feel a lack of control. I feel like I'm about to be embarrassed. If you just push pause in that moment and think about, how can I improve this situation? Because there's a chance that the other person is equally upset or having a bad day as well. Being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes can go a long ways towards understanding the situation. But you're not going to take the time to think about, where would this other person be coming from? Why would they potentially embarrassed? Why is this even embarrassing to you? Why are you feeling frustrated about this specifically? But without the pause, there's no chance to understand that. There's no opportunity for someone to say, I'm really sorry, or, let me go find out more information and I will get back to you, and being patient with that. And that's what emotional intelligence is about. It's really about how you understand yourself, how you have a relationship with yourself, and how you can manage your emotions. And then also, how do you try to understand other people, and how do you manage the relationships with other people? And you can't do that ever if all you have are built-in gut responses that put a gulf or a distance or impact that relationship. You can't unsay things that you said. Once it's out, it's out. And then you have to do damage control. The opposite of that is to put a little pause in there and to take a minute to say, is this really the best thing? How would it feel if I understood where they were coming from? There's a really great conversation I've had with a fellow barter coach around understanding the person's needs versus what are they really getting at versus what are they saying about that. And getting to a place where you can have a conversation about what is it that you're really needing in this moment, because you can also help stop someone else's need from manifesting as rocket fuel for a bad relationship, a bad conversation, hurtful needs. It's really understanding that needs are general and are not particular to a specific person or a specific action. Needs are universally shared by all, and they are the core motivators. Everything we say or do is an attempt to meet a need. So if you're having a big reaction, maybe you take a pause and understand, what is the need that I'm trying to solve for in this moment. And if someone else is reacting at you in a very strong way, stopping and asking, what is the need that they maybe want to talk about, versus just being angry. So that goes a long ways towards the emotional intelligence part. But for example, let me just back up and talk about the needs just a minute. Some of these needs are things like safety and security, rest and relaxation. Some of them are a need for acceptance, a need for appreciation, a need for trust. Maybe it's a need for harmony. Maybe it's a need for humor or excitement. Maybe someone's in a really happy mood and you come in and you've had a really bad day and you have a gut reaction that is negative and saying, you know what, I just really talk about this right now. And the other person really just had a need. They get upset, like, you never listen to me. You never want to hear my side of the story. And what they really needed in the moment was some celebration. They just wanted you to hear them and see them. And so understanding the basic needs at any given point in time all come from the pause. The growth of emotional intelligence all comes from the ability to pause after you have a big emotion. So I've talked a lot about the pause and how important the pause is in growing your emotional intelligence. But how do you practice that pause? My epiphany this week was I am a poorly practicing Buddhist. But if you are a Christian, you have a faith, maybe you're Jewish, Muslim, whatever your faith is, whatever your philosophy is, whatever your spirituality practice or belief system, or how you want to approach the universe, any of those things. But as a poorly practicing Buddhist, I understood this week that that's the point of meditation. Meditation and mindfulness, that is your pause practice. That is learning to sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, and be still and acknowledge that you have these thoughts, which are tied to the connection between the neurocortex and your limbic brain. That's the feeder channel between them. Like, all these thoughts are coming into your brain. Some of them are triggered by your limbic brain. Some of them are triggered by your neocortex, trying to sort through some things. But letting those thoughts come in and letting them pass by and practicing that pause. And when you practice the pause, whether it is through meditation or maybe it's through your prayer practice, if you have a prayer practice and you're learning to be quiet and sit still with the deity that you worship, whether it's God or whether you're Indian and you have multiple gods, like whatever it is, when you sit and you take time to be mindful of the passing of your thoughts, and you're being mindful of the sip of tea that you're taking, or you're taking a drink of water and you're saying, I'm noticing this water, I'm noticing this tea. And you're putting a pause between the sensation of drinking and your neocortex. There's that pause in between the two. And so thinking about your pause practice and building your emotional intelligence, I really invite you to spend more time doing those things that resonate with you to do your pause practice. If it's prayer, maybe consider doing more prayer time, daily prayer time. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe it's learning to sit still, and whatever the deity that you worship, that you are just holding space for that deity. Maybe you're holding space, if you're a meditator, you're holding space for yourself, but you're practicing holding space for your sensory and your inputs, and you're holding space for it and then leaving a gap. And what does that gap feel like? And how do you feel about that gap? And how do you manage that gap? And so I think all of those things are the important parts of learning pause practice, so that you can eventually build your emotional intelligence around how you manage those neurosynapses. Because the neurosynapses can be rewired, and you can learn how to be a different person emotionally, and how you show up with an emotional intelligent viewpoint. And then you can be the calm in the storm. You can then take the pause and ask yourself, what is it this person needs? What do I need? How can I articulate my needs in a thoughtful way versus just a gut reaction way? So I invite all of you to do some pause practice this week. A plug, I'm building right now my Patreon. It will be at patreon.com/inside the pickle jar, no spaces, all one word. You can find me there. I have membership tiers. There is not a lot built out. I'm still working on that. I'm hoping to begin launching everything after the first of the year. I'm spending the holiday break. I'll still be doing the podcast, but I'll be spending my holiday break building out the Patreon in a way that makes sense and that you all will find it very valuable. So please go check it out. I also want to remind everybody that words have meaning and words have power. And so, we're like candles. We're only going to be on this earth for so long. And eventually we will burn up completely and there'll be nothing left of us. But while our light shines, we can share that light with 1,000 other candles and it takes nothing away from us. So remember that words have power, not just to other people, but also to yourself. And be sure that you're kind to yourself. So let your light shine, as my good friend or my favorite Patreon out there, the Unexpected Gypsy, Wendy, says, let your light shine. Share your light with other people. Be good to yourself and others. Until next time, happy evening, happy morning. We'll talk later.